In the last tutorial, we finished off this ear, and now our goal is to start texturing our model. Now, before we texture, we have to do a couple of things. First thing is we have to fix these normals, and then second, we'll start actually UV unwrapping. I know that's for 2 videos I promised to go into UV unwrapping, but this stuff you actually have to do ahead of time, and it'll actually help us in the long run. Now, if you look at our character, you'll notice that each of these faces, they're so boxy, and unless you smooth it, they're always going to be boxy in this way. But actually that's not true at all, because when it comes to modeling, you have to work on normals. And what a normal is generally you have this one polygon, and the way the polygon is facing is kind of in the simplest way, that is partially how its normals are facing. So right now this normal is facing outwards here, and the way the shadow goes on is also involved somehow. But for now, what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that our normals are only one-sided. So what you got to do is select all your models, go into, well, select one shape at a time, and over here you have the actual shape, and over here you have the surface, and over here you have the shape, and it's the actual the mesh. And you just go to render stats, and what you want to turn off is double-sided. Turn this off always. And this one, you'll do the same thing. Just go to the surface shape and go to double-sided. Now, when you name your, for example, if this is the arm, what I'm going to do is I'm going to name it arm, and you see that it automatically tells us the shape here. And I can just delete all by type history, and now you have an object, and it's called arm. For example, in the outliner, you can see it's called arm now, and then the actual mesh that makes it up is called arm shape, and then you have to make sure double-sided is turned off, and make sure it's not opposite as well. And then you do the same thing with the body. This is just temporary. We'll just call it body, and I'll delete all by type history. As you can see, it's called body, and body 1 because we called a layer here body 1. What I like to do with layers is I call them body layer. And right now it's not in, right now this object is not in this layer. Because what happened was we combined the mesh of the head and the skull before, and when you do that, you kind of create a new object, and it's no longer in the layer. So you can actually put it back in the layer by right-clicking and going add selected object, and right now the view is turned off, but now it's turned on. And then you can go back to the attribute editor. You can change this back to body, and it's no longer going to have a 1. And then body shape, you can just check to see if it's double-sided. Over here, same thing. You have an ear, delete all by type history, and now you have ear shape, and just take off double-sided. And that's really important, and I'll tell you why. If for example you have this ear and you want to duplicate it to the side, then what you would do, don't copy this right now, I'm just showing you. What you do is just freeze the transformations. Right, so then all these zero out, the translate, rotate, and scale, and this is its natural state. When you freeze, this becomes its natural state. And what you do is just reset transformation. What reset transformation does is it sets the axis for your rotation and moving and your scaling to the very center of the grid. For example, if that grid's turned on, you see it's actually at the very center of your whole project. And that's helpful because if you're modeling an object that's symmetrical, then what you can do is you can go edit, duplicate, and then click special and click this box here. And I'll just reset it first, reset settings. So if you just duplicate it right now, it's going to create a copy of this ear, and it's going to put one in the exact same position. It's going to be called like ear 1. But if you can also create an instance, which is an instance is kind of a copy of this ear, but whenever we modify this ear, the instance will change as well. But right now we're just going to create a copy because I don't have any intention of keeping the ear that I'm duplicating. But what you can do is you can scale it in X, and this is the X value, and when you scale it in -1 in X, what it's going to do is just mirror all the mesh and normals to the other side. So as you can see, I apply it, and now there's a copy of the ear on the other side, and it's not an instance or anything. So if I modify this one, the other one won't change. But you see, it still says -1 here, And what you want to do is just freeze the transformation so it doesn't say -1. So now it's all the transformations are frozen, but then you gotta check the ear shape, and you can see it's opposite because we mirrored it in -1. It basically turned it inside out. So now when I turn off opposite, and you have to make sure that's turned off, you can see normals are inside out. So you can see that the ear is inside out, and you can see through the backside, and you can see inside the ear where the faces are. So what you want to do is normal, reverse, and now your ears are the right side out. And it's not flipped, it's not opposite, and it's not scaled -1. But now you have a proper facing ear. And when you're working in games, that's really important because you might have a game engine that doesn't know how to deal with that. And it might turn like random things inside out, and you're like, oh, why is it black and why is it not working out? And that's really important to note. So just remember that when you're working with, when you're using my method at least, turn off double-sided and make sure it's not opposite, and always double check to freeze and make sure that it doesn't have any negative scales. So I'm just going to delete this ear because we're not going to use it right now. And going back to normals, when you have edges on these normals, and this is probably the most important thing, is that you want to make it so that it doesn't have these hard edges. So right now all the edges are hardened. We hardened them before already as well. You can actually go right now and you can select an edge you want to smooth. For example, maybe the tip of the nose you want to keep it sharp, or maybe you want it smooth. In the case of anime characters, ours at least, we don't have a smooth line here on our character. It's almost invisible. So we might want to take this and go normals and go soften edge. And now when the lighting on these normals are calculated, it actually thinks that it's one plane just smoothing through like that. And that creates the edge, and that creates the illusion of a rounded edge in a way. So you think about it, we gotta do that for most of the characters. For example, so let's just say I softened the whole character, and now you can see that all the normals are softened as well. But there are certain things we never want to soften. For example, in seams of the mouth. So go ahead and do that. Just go normal, soften edge, and then now for the seam of the mouth, for example, you know that your lip doesn't transfer from this one to this one smoothly, unless you're like wearing lipstick or something, but that's really not what you're supposed to do. It should be a hole here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to harden the edge, and obviously if your character actually has a mouth that can open and stuff, then this would be a different case, and you might want to harden it or not. It depends. You have to use your own discretion when you learn what this does. You just go to normal and you go harden edge, and as you can see, now we're creating seams in our characters that where the lighting stops here, and then a new set of lighting begins here. Then the rest of it is still fine. And even the nose, even though it's softened, you can see that when you turn on an angle, it's still got an edge because that's just the border of the polygons. So you have to be really smart when you're doing this and just think about it. For example, the clothing. Here's where the neck meets the shirt, and what I want to do is harden that edge for sure. So now you can tell that when the lighting lights up the shirt, it doesn't light up the neck the same way. And the same thing goes for maybe the inside of, since this is a collar and the inside's not supposed to, and the inside's more of a lip for the shirt, then I'm going to harden both the inside and the outside of it. So I hardened that, and now his collar is going to be hardened. And you see that there's edges here, but we're just going to keep them soft because this is a ring, technically. When you think about it, this is like the collar of your shirt. This is supposed to be softened from here to here. So the inside edges here and here, they're supposed to be soft. And it's always, I guess, depending on your character, like if you make a robotic character, you might want to harden it first and then soften edges as you go. But for an organic character, you want to soften it and then harden the edges that are supposed to be hardened. So next thing is we got his shirt here. So I'm just going to select all those, and I'm going to normal, and I'm going to harden the edges. So you can see that you don't really notice it from the bottom because the pants come up first, but from the top down you can see that that's his shirt line. And you want to do that for a lot of sections where it's supposed to be like that. Depending on your pants, like if you have a seam on the side of your pants, you might want to harden. You might want to harden the edge. For example, it would look like this. You know, but it depends. I'm actually going to keep this soft because pants aren't that hard. But parts where I am going to harden it is obviously this part here. So I'm double clicking these, make sure I select the right one, so I'm going to do the inside as well. Oh, that's not the inside. I'm going to do the inside ring. So where that leg meets the shorts for the first time. And what I'm going to do is just harden those edges. So now what we're doing is we're creating kind of a map for where the light's supposed to bounce off these normals. So if we just keep doing that, and you just depending on your model, you do it where it's supposed to go. Now the shoes are kind of tricky. It depends on your type of shoes you have. But right now, I like to think that these ones should be soft, and then the ones on the bottom here, for example, if I click this, this, and this, these are where the bottom of the shoe meets the side of the shoe, and I feel like those should be hard. So we create that. And you can see it's all working out properly. And this is the way normals should be set up. Now we have another dilemma here where we have an arm, and I'm just going to go ahead and soften all those. And when it comes to the arm here and here, it looks like something I want to harden. So normal and harden the edge. So now we got that working out. And maybe the last thing you want to do, and it really depends on how detailed your character is, you could harden the tips of the fingers to represent your nails. But you gotta use your intuition here and see how it looks like. And it hasn't really made a difference. So I'm just gonna leave it. I just edit undo, or I can just select it all. For example, select all the edges. I mean, you're just hardening edges. That's all you can do right now. I'm just gonna soften those edges. So the only problem from this situation. Actually, I forgot to do the ears. I'll just soften those ears, soften edges, and your ear should be soft pretty much all the way around. Okay, now the only problem here is we have an arm and we have a body here, and they're not connected, so there will be no smoothing from this part of the shirt to this part of the shirt. So after you combine the arm, you'll have to go back and make sure to fix those normals. So that's the first part of this, and we've just fixed all these normals. And after we combine these meshes here, what we're going to do is soften the normals across this joint of the arm as well. Now, some people like to separate their meshes and never combine them, so you'll never be able to soften. And the ideal place to do that would be places where, like for example, the neck meets the shirt. You know that this is going to be a hard edge anyways, so you might want to separate the neck from the shirt, and you can model your characters and keep them all separate, so you can texture them separately, and that might be a good idea depending on your game, and you might have interchangeable heads or whatever. But don't separate them when it doesn't make sense for the normals. For example, if the hand and arm are separated, then you don't get the smooth transition from the arm to the hand. So yeah, that's setting up the normals before we go into UV unwrapping mapping.